There are certain advantages that come with being the pastoral intern at a wonderful church like Hillside Community Church. One of those is that my email is not on the website, so no one will be able to write and complain about the giant spoiler that I'm about to give you. Now, the spoiler is about a television show that's been out since the 90s, so to a certain extent, if you wanted to watch it, you would have seen it. But either way, I'm about to tell you about the last episode of the last season of the American sitcom Full House. Does anyone know it? Well, in the last episode of the series, DJ Tanner is looking for a date to the prom and she gets one. Okay, I'm going to try again. Maybe with more context, the story will mean a little bit more. So Full House is a sitcom. It premiered in the late 80s and then it ran through the early 90s. It's about a widower who has 3 children. He has 3 daughters, in fact, and he doesn't know how to raise them, so he invites his rock and roll brother-in-law and his stand-up comedy best friend, Joey, to move into his house and help raise the kids. Along the way, his brother-in-law, Jesse, finds love with one Aunt Becky, yes, of college admission scandal fame. The 2 of them have children, the family grows, they adopt a golden retriever, and the kids grow up. Now, in the last season, the oldest daughter, DJ, has dumped an old boyfriend who the audience kind of liked. His name was Steve. But he was a little bit older than her, and he went off to junior college first, and he got his own apartment first, and the 2 of them just couldn't make it work in these different phases of life. So she breaks up with him, and she has 2 new suitors vying for her attention, the rock and roller Viper and the very wealthy Nelson. And she winds up breaking up with both of them too, leaving her dateless to the prom. And so in the very last moments of this 8-season-long series, the door opens to reveal the man who has swooped in to take DJ to the prom. Who is it but her old flame, Steve? And the family is happy, and the audience is happy, and we're just happy, happy, happy. What a great story. And I think our text for today is a little bit like that sitcom, or really like any great story, in that the context is everything. See, without the context, our text from Genesis today is nice. God makes Abraham a promise. Abraham isn't too sure about the promise, and so God shows Abraham this beautiful, awe-inspiring nature, and all of a sudden, Abraham feels good. That's an okay story, but for us to really get what's happening in the story, we have to get some context. In this case, the context we need happens to be the history of God's entire relationship with humanity, which is kind of a long one, but I'll do my best to summarize it in a few episodes. Number 1, God makes the earth. God makes the sky. God makes the ocean. God makes the trees, the plants, the animals, the humans. It's a little discrepancy in the Bible about exactly how that happened and in what order, but that's another sermon. The point is that God made it. It was glorious, and God had a wonderful relationship with humanity until humanity messed it up. Now, I'm not saying they were evil. They just let their curiosity get the better of them and they made a mistake. And then instead of owning up, they tried to hide it, and that hurt God. And God said, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. And having broken up with the first humans and telling them to move out and get their own place, they do. They have kids. Those kids try to worship God, but they don't do it in an equal way, and that creates some hard feelings, and one of them kills the other one, and, well, basically, humanity continues to devolve. Eventually, humanity gets so bad that God says, I want to wipe you all off the face of the planet, except for one guy, Noah. Noah's doing an okay job, so he's allowed to make a boat and put his family on it and put some animals on it so that they will survive this awful flood that comes down onto the planet. And for Noah's family on that boat, they probably felt a sense of terror and awe. God is scary, but God can do a lot. And at the end of the flood, we're going to skip past all the death and the awful parts. That's another sermon. God sends a rainbow to assure Noah that God will never again attempt to erase humanity off the face of the planet. But humanity keeps messing up. Noah's son messes up. Later, human beings decide that they want to be all godlike, so they're going to build tall towers and try to reach the heavens, and God gets angry again. He scatters them. He makes it so that they can't understand each other's languages. And I'm using he for God because, I don't know, this God just seems like a big angry guy up there. But so this is where we are when we meet Abram. We see the history of God's relationship to humanity as one that involves glorious creation and destructive disconnection. And when we meet Abram, we learn that he is descended from the good guys, the ones who were doing it right when the rest of humanity failed. And we learn that God has a promise for Abram. God says, I will give you many descendants. I will make a great nation out of you. I will bless you. I will make you a blessing. I will make you a blessing for all the world. And Abraham initially says, that sounds good. Because the first time God makes this promise is not in chapter 15 that we read today. It's in chapter 12, just a little bit prior. And so God makes the promise, and Abram says, that sounds good. And Abraham wanders around. He gets some land. He builds altars. He worships. He, makes a few mistakes along the way, mostly in the interest of self-preservation. But God keeps telling him, Abram, I love you. And God blesses Abram with wealth and livestock and land and a wife. And God even says that your descendants will be so plentiful that they'll be like dust on the earth, so ubiquitous, so hard to count, that they'll be everywhere and they'll be a blessing. And Abraham seems to buy into this for several chapters until we get to today's reading. When God says, I've got you, Abraham. I just took you through a battle and you won it, and that's the proof that I love you. And Abram says, I don't know about that, because the whole thing was supposed to be that you were going to give me kids, and you haven't given me kids, and I'm getting kind of up there. Well, the God from a few chapters ago, the one who erased humanity off the face of the planet, that God might have stomped in and said to Abram, man, what are you talking about? I've given you all this, and you have the audacity to say that you think I don't love you because I just haven't done the last thing yet? How dare you? I want nothing to do with you. But it seems God has maybe also matured a little bit in these chapters, or at least God has realized that Abram needs a lighter touch. And so God gives Abram a sign. The stars. Now, it's not a sign where God clearly did some big dramatic intervention right in that moment. Abram has been under these stars as a nomadic person probably more times than he can count. God's sign comes in the form of perspective, of saying, Abram, look at this splendor that I've created. Do you have a sense of awe? Do you understand what I can do? And I'm saying that your descendants will be like this. It's an amazing climax to the story. But if you grew up going to church camp, you might realize that it's not the end of the story. If you grew up going to church camp, you might have learned a song called Father Abraham. It has some funny choreography where all the kids are doing this. And okay, if you know it, you know it. If you don't know it, I'll happily teach it to you during coffee hour downstairs after church. But basically, the words say, Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So chapter 15 can't be the end because Father Abraham still doesn't have any sons. And indeed, if at the end of Full House, DJ Tanner has her prom date, then Abram has his promise but no sons. Which is why, if we're back in our Full House world, when Netflix picks it up for the reboot, we learn that DJ didn't wind up with Steve. DJ married somebody else, and now she's a widow, and she has her own kids, and she's grieving, and then she dates somebody else until finally, at the end of season 3, in the series finale, she and Steve get hitched. That one might be more of a real spoiler, because the Netflix adaptation is newer, but just so you know. Well, Abram also takes a few more chapters, but a few wives, a name change, and a lot of words later, he does wind up with more sons than you can count on a hand and probably quite a few unnamed daughters, because why remember that? Well, Abram makes mistakes. He particularly hurts a lot of the women in his life, but ultimately, he becomes the father of Isaac and Ishmael, the men who are foundational for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So when God says, I will bless all the peoples of the world through you, we see the potential of this promise. In chapter 15, our text for today is essential to that promise, because after Abram sees the stars, that's when Abram makes a promise back to God. God and Abram make a covenant that day, and I won't get into the details because it's rather gory and might be hard to stomach, especially for the vegans and vegetarians among us, but basically, they enter into a pact together saying, God will provide for Abram, but Abram has to live out his part. And as I read it today, I think Abram's descendants, we have to live out our part too. You see, God can give Abram all these descendants, but there's no guarantee that we really will bless the world, right? God creates all these religions through Abram, but we could easily just fight each other instead of being a blessing through cooperation and appreciating each other's differences. God can make magnificent stars. God can put northern lights in the sky. God can do amazing, awe-inspiring works through nature, but if we're so busy running around through our lives that we don't notice it, then it's not too inspiring to us at all. So when I read this text, I see a climax moment in a really good story. A story that has the potential to make us happy, 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 but only if we keep up our end of the bargain and our part of the promise. We can choose to bless all the peoples of the earth through appreciating our neighbors, those like us, those not like us, or we can choose to be the descendants who fight each other. We can choose to look up at the stars God has made, appreciate the wonder and the promise and the potential if we do our part, or we can choose to let the pollution and all those street lights make us forget that God ever created it all. And so my hope for us is that we will regain our ability to see the wonder, to have a sense of awe about all that God has given and all the potential there is, if only we will keep up our end of the deal. So that whether we find our sense of awe in our neighbor, in our duplex, in our houses that are packed too close together in this city, or whether we go for a drive out to where Reverend Tom lives, where we can actually see the stars above us, that we will be able to say, Father Abraham had many stars. I am one of them, and so are you. That together we can live out this promise of blessing if we remember that God has given us a charge. God has given us beauty. It is up to us to be the stars in someone else's world. May it be so. Amen.